All right. Good evening, everybody. This is the Hillbilly Think Tank. I am Spencer Keck, and I am coming at you live from Hardin County, Kentucky, where we know that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what makes life worthwhile. Now, y'all, this is the Hillbilly Think Tank because I'm the educated hillbilly. No, that's not an oxymoron. Don't call me a moron. There have been educated, erudite, and emancipated hillbillies coming through the Cumberland Gap ever since my family came through with Daniel Boone years ago. And we have a lot of wisdom passed down to us through quite a few warriors throughout the generations. And I'm here tonight to talk about how we need to have more wisdom for these angry young men that it seems like we're just more and more are coming out of the woodwork. So let's get a little idea of what could be going on. Now here I am on a platform that I'm enjoying, but I also know that this platform is becoming, and it has been for quite a while, a breeding ground for anger and for the anger of young men, especially. And this is something that is very, very disturbing, also concerns me greatly as a public school teacher. So I've seen what high school kids are talking about, what they're listening to on the internet, and how that's translating to them getting ideas that maybe their parents don't even have. But all of a sudden, they're these angry young folks, even though their parents have handed them everything, which of course might be part of the problem, is that we have mollycoddled our kids, but that's another subject. But how are we to turn away from anger that is unfounded? This reminds me of what I used to tell one of my teenagers as a teenager was growing up, would see this, constant teenage rebellion, which I recognize is actually a necessity. It's a life force. We have to be rebellious as youth, or we're just going to be sticks in the mud. I understood that. So my constant, I guess you could say this little pithy proverb was, it's great to be a rebel, but be a rebel with a cause. Don't be a rebel without a cause. Don't just be rebelling just to rebel when you don't even know what you're rebelling against. You're just doing it out of fashion or out of a fad. But this comes with wisdom, understanding what it is that you can change and what you need to change. And, there's things in this world that we need to rebel against, and the rebellion might last a long time. But if we're wasting it on rebellions for fashion and not for actually fruitful change, then that's wasting our energy and wasting our time. So, seeing a lot of youth being sucked into this angry manosphere that's full of just, hating women, hating minorities, self-loathing. And it is really disturbing because a lot of young men who actually have brains, if they weren't sucked into this brain vacuum, we'd really be able to have young folks that can make this change, make this rebellion in the right direction, not in the destructive direction of hurting those that are vulnerable. And that's what I see on the internet is a lot of let's bash the vulnerable. All right. Hey, we got Tom on here tonight. Tom, always rely on you. Appreciate it. And Tom says, after a lot of events, especially things like mass shooter events, a friend has taken to explain the reason as he was mad. Our society has a terrible history of not teaching young boys and young men how to deal with their emotions in healthy ways. Absolutely. So that's why I'm saying we need healthy warriors that can impart wisdom. You know, I've seen what destruction and chaos can do. I've seen how it can affect me, folks that, you know, I was in combat with, and folks that I served with in and out of combat, but, we served a long time. I served from 1990 to 2014. I know what it is that can get in and eat our souls. I've also survived, a childhood where a stepdad was very violent. So I've had some wisdom now dealing with that, coming through that, and having creative sources to understand, like Tom's saying, there is a way to teach young men to deal with their emotions in healthy ways. And Tom's asking what's on my chest. So this is the Eberly Stock Force Pack. Great, similar pack, we use in reconnaissance missions. And I've taken to saying, hey, this is a great deal for, your minimalist wallet when you want to carry it around but don't want to stuff it in your pocket. It's got little pockets inside here for that. It's got great pockets for first aid gear, or your hand sanitizer, dude wipes if you're going to be on the trail, do some hiking like I do, business cards, got a phone charging block. Yeah. Anyway, testing it out, having a good time. Plus, I get to have, some really cool morale patches on there in the front. So I thought that was kind of fun. But yeah, my new hiking pack, actually even like taking the store easier and keeping stuff in my pockets. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track. So yeah, yes, and yes, Tom, this is great for a medic kit. You can put a tourniquet on here too. Got Velcro fasteners all through here. Um, put your self-defense knife here. Keep it in a good concealed spot. So, anywho, all right. Tom says he's got an Everly stock bag that's more of a waist pack. Yeah, I've actually got that too. You just can't see it because I'm sitting down. Has some first aid and trauma stuff, but isn't as big. May have to look. I actually got their really big fanny pack. I actually never wear my fanny. It's always in front, and you can put all kinds of good gear in there. some kind of gear like you and I like to talk about offline. Anywho, so I am right now, of course, I'm running for magistrate here in District 3 in Hardin County. And as someone who taught in high school here for 2 years before I transferred to teaching at a middle school where I currently teach in a different district, I am very concerned about the anger in young men where they have no place to give, use of their manly energy. And, we really need to work on this. I listened to Prof G's podcast, that's Scott Galloway's podcast, a lot lately. He's really taken up this cause. We really have abandoned the necessary task of being, people that can train young men in how to be manly without being just overly horrible people, without being misogynist, without being someone who thinks it's cool, like I said, to bash the vulnerable. I don't want to bash anybody that's vulnerable. I want to raise us all up, empower us all. So there is, even though he's not in Kentucky, there is a candidate that is running for the Senate in Maine. If you haven't heard of him, it's Graham Plattner, Marine Corps vet. And because he's been through some similar experiences as I have, because I was in the hospital corps and served with Marines in combat, I thought it would be interesting tonight to hear what he said to Jon Stewart when Jon Stewart asked him, "Hey, you were a prime candidate for, you know, one of these angry young men recruiting networks that pulls young men into violent far right groups." And he describes why he didn't go that route. So, yeah, Tom, absolutely. I'm getting to, but it's good to do it now. As Tom's saying, not all masculinity is toxic. And it's time that we stop this talk as if just because you're a man and you're masculine, that you're toxic. That's not true. Um, Now, there certainly is toxic masculinity, Tom says, and it takes time to unlearn that stuff. And that's exactly it. Thanks, Tom, because that's exactly what we're here to talk about. Copycats. How do you show them, though, that real warriors aren't the ones selling how-to programs? And that's it, copycats. So part of the way I'm doing it is, of course, I am a public school teacher, and I am teaching some of the most disadvantaged youth in our neighboring county of Jefferson County. I proudly also was doing the same thing here in Hardin County. I decided to make a switch to Jefferson so I could run for office and there wouldn't be a conflict of interest. And I'm really enjoying the kids that I am reaching, reaching them with literature, also reaching them with history, reaching them with my personal experience, my being able to actually also relate to them. So, being a multicultural, centered person that I am. So, Tom says, all I know how to do is set my example. And that's it, Tom. I treat people well. I can call out toxicity when I see it, and I have. Tom says that, and I totally agree, Tom. So, yeah, setting the example. Now, as a combat vet, that has been at times tough. I was going to let another combat vet give his experience and copycats his example of how he is showing them that real warriors aren't the ones selling them how-to programs. When we say how-to, we mean how to be toxic, masculine assholes. Can't say it any worse. These guys that are glorifying rape, misogyny, prostitution. Yeah, no. So let's check out a good example of someone that has a positive message and is actually on the positive masculine side. So let's say Graham Plattner, very well-read individual. I enjoyed listening to this discussion he had with Jon Stewart. I encourage anyone, if you would, to go back and listen to the whole thing. He is an FDR Democrat, he says, a New Deal Democrat. And he recognizes that we did not get to fully put the New Deal into effect because, unfortunately, FDR died too soon. And he was on the way to making sure that we had a really firmly set workers' rights in place. And yeah, I'll just let him talk.
Question, Greg. Why do you? So you just said something really interesting, which is angry young man back from fourth deployment, online, struggling. Why weren't you captured by the alt-right? Because boy, do you sound like their target audience to be captured by the anger of that movement. Because you're in the time frame. You have the experience of it. White guy, working class, angry vet, struggling to fit in. You are fertile soil, brother, for that kind of recruitment. Why do you think it didn't go that way?
One is because even in high school, I had some absolutely spectacular teachers who sort of opened my eyes up to, I would like a criticism of the larger system that didn't require you to like look for scapegoats in other working people.
Oh, that's interesting. You didn't fall into the like pronoun trap where you're like, they fucking pronoun people. I'm voting for Trump.
No, and also obviously I have two very loving parents who very much engendered in me this idea that like you need to be open with other people and you need to be like empathetic and compassionate. And I thank my lucky stars that I have two wonderful parents that did that. But I will say the other thing is like when I got back, I definitely how do I put this? Like I definitely was looking for like answers, and in that, like
and a community,
hence why the internet, because I certainly wasn't getting it in the real world, but I was also going to college, and in school, I became friends with a number of people who had very, very, very different lived experiences than mine.
So once again, I'd like, just pause here a few times. So community. This is what the youth are lacking today. They're lacking real community, real human connection. And they're aching deep in their soul for it. And the algorithms in these platforms understand this, and they're feeding them an alternative reality, an alternative community that is not communal. We are losing our sense of humanity as we lose our real human connections. And as we lose our human connections, we lose our humanity, we lose our empathy. And this loss of empathy is where this anger is coming from.
And in doing that, I realized that the best thing for me to do is to like spend time around people who have had a totally different life than I have, and understand that their life, their lived experience is just as valid as mine. And that the more that I can like, the more that I can one, open myself up to those people, and then also have them open up to me, the more I get to learn about the human experience, and the more I get to learn about, and it's really difficult to do that and also start thinking that you should like hate other people. So like I think in some ways it was those sort of, I had a good foundation, honestly.
Right. Well, it is, the internet is so good at reducing things to two dimensions.
So, yeah, this bicameral dimension, where we can't see that there are more than two ways, more than three ways, more than four ways, more than five ways to come at almost any problem. This requires higher order thinking, which requires an open minded education. But education has to be, which Plattner is talking about here, exposure to multiple types of people, multiple types of cultures, and a willingness to listen. And again, a willingness to be human and to connect with other humans. But we are little by little, and then in large ways now, sealing ourselves off hermetically from anyone who thinks different, looks different, talks different than us. And that is all due to this internet vacuum that we're sealing ourselves in.
Whereas life is obviously you're living in three, and from what I understand, sometimes four. But I'm wondering if that world, did you understand its appeal? Because I imagine anybody who's a Marine or anybody who served in Iraq and Afghanistan knows those guys,
Oh, totally.
hangs out with those guys, loves those guys
Loves
for
those
other
guys. I mean, they're
reasons
still
other than some of their politics.
totally.
But I also imagine you understand the siren song of
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. And
I mean,
were you
look,
cognizant of it when you were looking for community? And did you ever feel its pull in that way?
yeah, and I also got a lot of that in the Marine Corps. Like,
Mm,
like
right.
the Marine Corps is, I mean, if we're talking about like people want to be part of the community, having a purpose, feeling connected, and for young men, there's the whole like aggression and violence thing. Like, I was the Marine Corps infantry. Like, I mean, it doesn't get more
No,
those things than that.
as aggressive and violent. Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
training. Yeah.
and but I also got to the end of it and realized that it didn't fill any holes in me. Like it didn't. In fact, it had left me more alone and more isolated in many ways. And so so for me, there's like I did kind of already know that looking for more of that was not going to be the answer. I kind of got like the maximum version of that, or the maximalist version of that, and it didn't work.
Right. You didn't need the alt-right. You were enlisted in it. So
And that's just an experience that he is actually vocalizing in a way that I frequently have to folks. It is so hard when you're in a unit like the Marine Corps, like other very high speed, low drag, but very high intensity units, to step back into the civilian sector, even if you don't go to combat, but you're constantly in a training tempo that is highly aggressive, highly, you know, able to put you in extremely dangerous situations and teach you not to flinch. Not only not to flinch, but to be the first to strike. So, getting back into a situation where you realize you have got to pull your humanity back from the brink is what he's describing going through and what I've gone through. So now that's the wisdom that we're talking about. knowing what it is, what it's like to go to, as he said, the maximalist position you can go to in masculinity and hyper masculinity. And again, not everybody that's a Marine, they're not all toxic. There are a handful that are, but many aren't. It's a great brotherhood. Nothing like it. But there are toxic folks there, absolutely. And being able to dial back, realize that everyone you're encountering in life doesn't need a reaction or an interaction that is hyper aggressive, that doesn't work, that you don't have to be constantly on guard, that you might be squished by the more dominant persons. In the Marine Corps, dominance is the deal. I mean, you can't win wars without being a dominant or capable of dominance. And so, to me, that's what he's voicing, having to come back from. Now, again, young men today in America, a sense of what it means to be masculine, to be strong, to be capable, has not been coupled with this understanding that you can be all those things without being an alpha male, over the top, toxic asshole. You can still be masculine without having to be in someone else's face or dominating. So now these toxic, male misogynists that have their channels teaching men to be over the top, toxic, masculine personalities, they're not helping these young men fill a real void, but it feels like they are because it looks glamorous. They all look like they roll in gold bracelets and, hot women. But we need in America people like Plattner, other veterans, and like myself, to be that example, like Tom, we're talking about, not just veterans. I've known plenty of farmers, plenty of rural folks that are the kindest, gentlest gentlemen that I've ever known in my life. I would say my papa, who was a country doctor but grew up dirt poor in Appalachia, was one of them. So we've got to be that example. See, Tom, what you saying? Tom saying, I guess I'm fortunate I was raised well before the interwebs glamorized the toxicity by a mom who took no crap and taught me to be a decent guy. Yeah, absolutely. There's just no doubt about it. All right, if y'all don't mind, let's hear a little more. Really feel like he is on to something here.
You had lived it.
Yeah, I mean, like, and don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I will always be proud of. I love the Marine Corps. I'm very proud of being a Marine. The guys I served with still remain some of my closest friends. But it is definitely like it's a hyper masculine. Certainly, when I was in, it was all male, and like things that are virtues there are definitely not virtues in the normal world. And then I had to go out into the normal world, learn that the hard way. But then also the thing that actually made me happy was real community. Like the thing that actually ended up filling all the emptiness inside of me, it wasn't rage, it wasn't anger, it wasn't any of that stuff. It was literally like just spending time with other people in the place that I live, and working with people on projects to improve all of our lives. And suddenly in all of that, I was like, oh man, I'm a legitimately happier person. I mean, I spent years like really, really disillusioned. And then I moved back to Maine, started working on the ocean, which has another big part. I mean, it's hard to not feel a sense of place when you're like on the sea, on your boat, looking at the seals and the eagles and like, you know, like
Wait, what ocean? I'm in Jersey, man. What are you talking about?
yeah, Maine's pretty. I mean, and that's
It's
when I
pretty
mean,
amazing.
I am so lucky to be where I'm from. I'm so lucky that my community, when I came home, really kind of wrapped its arms around me in some ways, and it allowed me to come back. Like I finally got to come home, and I was lucky enough that it actually is my home. It's the place I was born and raised. That has a lot to do with it.
So just give a plug to Kentucky here. I call myself the hillbilly sailor since I was a sailor and a seafaring man for over 20 years. I can understand what he's saying. There's something about the sea that will let you know you are insignificant. You know, sometimes we need to remember our spot in the universe, especially if you're the hyper masculine. You know, the sea will correct you. There's nothing like the tempest to put you in your place, but then there's also nothing more calming than a calm sea. But coming back to Kentucky after my military service and after going to work as a civilian for the VA in Montana, not long after retiring, and coming back to Kentucky, and decided I was going to still give to the community by becoming a public school teacher. I understand what he's saying. That's where I found my humanity again, started reclaiming it. And I reclaim it more and more every day as I find ways to reach the disadvantaged kids and to let them see that they're just as good as anyone else. Sometimes they're even better.
But the big thing was like really just engaging with human beings and building that sense of like real in-person community. And it is challenging, right? Like human beings are still people.
Yeah, it's
So like
complicated.
the thing to understand, like it's never gonna be perfect, but it is, I don't know how to say this. It like in working with other people and connecting with other people in real life, not on the internet, but in real life, that is kind of what rebuilt all of my hope. And it's what rebuilt all of my positivity. And and I didn't have any of that when I was looking for it on the internet. I didn't have any of it when I was really, I mean, like the military kind of fills that hole for a little while when you're doing it, but the moment you leave it, it all goes away and now you're alone. And so it doesn't actually fix it. It's not like a long-term sustainable version of community. And and long-term sustainable community is the thing that like actually is, I mean, that's why I'm doing this.
But see, this is why, Graham, I feel like what's so different about what you're talking about is that it lacks the platitudes of somebody viewing something from above. You're viewing everything from within. You're talking about roots. You're talking about I was adrift and I went back and I planted these roots in my community, and here's how I did it, and here's how I rebuilt my sense of self and my sense of purpose. It is a story grounded in lived experience. And I do think that, you know, it certainly resonates with me, even though my experience in the world is so different than yours because I can touch it.
So that's the thing. Again, young folks and old folks and anyone in between, we need community. We need a sense of belonging, a sense of, you know, I belong here. I make something with and for the community. This whole idea that's been festering and boiling for 50 years in America that we're all John Wayne riding across the prairie by ourselves, can fight any battle by ourselves, don't need anyone. That is what is pulling us down. No one is an island unto themselves. And as we get more and more alienated, become less and less empathetic, then this is what is forcing us to this brink and this brinkdom and this sense of doom. But in community, you realize, no, there is hope. If you've got a community, you are a chain, and a chain is much harder to break than one little strand of little teeny tiny string all by itself. So, yeah. All right. Tom says, about 40 years ago, a woman I knew expressed surprise that I wasn't interested in a fling with her. As most guys, we were tripping on themselves to be with someone like me. I came back with, I'm not most guys. I realize that I'm not most guys, both a badge of honor and a serious statement about how seemingly most guys behave. Um, and yeah, could be, but I had one of the worst examples of how to be a man in my stepdad from Texas, who had used toxic masculinity, fundamentalism to try to inculcate, his dominance over me and over everyone in the family. But fortunately for me, I had about 4 to 5 years before he came along of just the most opposite examples of how to be a man. Again, my grandfather was the most humanitarian, humane, humble, but highly educated, very erudite, and very emancipated man. And he could, man, work a 12-hour day in his clinic and then just head out and for another 2 to 4 hours cut wood, literally with a chainsaw, haul timber around, clear brush and bushes, push a riding lawnmower over 20 acres of hillside lawn. And, you know, I saw with him what it was like to be a muscular man, but would never, ever, ever lay a hand on anyone. Could he defend himself if he needed to? Pretty darn sure. But he just epitomized what it meant to be a caring man, a truly gentle man. And that stuck with me even through the terror that started at age 5 and lasted until I was 18. And finally went out the window one night in Texas, hightailed it back to Kentucky with the help of my grandparents, my mom's parents, and my biological dad. So, yeah, um, if I hadn't had those examples, yeah, I would think that the stepdad was like most guys. But fortunately, I got a better example.
It feels really tangible to me. It feels really grounded in a kind of hierarchy of needs that I can grasp rather than cable news platitudinous nonsense.
Yep.
And that is what is so missing from our politics.
It's also, this is the part that gets me. It's not how people interact. I mean, that's the thing that gets me about this whole experience. And like I always get the question, from journalists. They're like, "What do you think explains the fact that you, a random guy from Eastern Maine, is now like beating where I'm like up 40 points on a 2-term elected sitting governor, and I'm polling far ahead of Susan Collins. I mean, and so they always call. They're like, how do you explain this? And I'm always like, honestly, it's because I think because I just like talk like a regular human being, and in many ways, I'm coming at this very much from like this space of just being down here in the real world and seeing what's going on, which is, and the other thing too is like, I also don't think that voters are, well, mostly because I am one too. Like, I don't think we're this like mass of people to be manipulated, right? Like there's, in the Democratic Party is still really bad at this, by the way. There's still this like idea that we got to like, there's like these magic words. We're like, oh, we didn't use the magic word last time that would
Dude.
have made people think we give a shit about them without actually giving a shit. Like,
Right.
it's like, nah, dude, people are smart. People like, they don't like when they're being they don't like the magic words. They want you to say things like, no, we want you to have health care. That's why we have this universal health care policy.
And here's the plan that we have that's going to
And here's the
connect
plan.
the money we're talking about to the
That's right.
value you might receive. You know,
Yep.
So this is what we need more of. Absolutely need to inundate ourselves and our culture with this dedication to humanity and to reconnecting all of us with our own humanity, not with the billionaire class and what they call humanity, and they have no clue what that is. So now, given examples of what we can do in order to get back to our humanity and how we can get young men plugged in to a network of mentors and examples of what it means to be a real man. But we've got to also recognize that right now, it's not just completely the internet. It's, every day in their face, people saying, hey, this is what masculinity looks like.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk briefly about the current U.S. doctrine and conduct of the administration in a particular event and a series of events, actually. As everybody in the dais and the witness table is aware, the Department of Defense Law of War Manual specifies that any order to kill shipwrecked persons in an illegal order would constitute a war crime. It isn't suggested there's a specific example to show a clear-cut example of what this entails in our own manual. With that in mind, let's look back a few weeks ago when a fishing crew ended a long day of hard fishing, scoring a full stock of albacore and swordfish on board. Without any warning or expectation, this small Ecuadorian fishing vessel, operating about 200 nautical miles off the Galapagos Islands, was militarily engaged by U.S. forces. It was hit once, then it was hit again. Not a warning shot, not an interdiction, 2 drone strikes. Survivors described chaos and severe injuries. Our U.S. forces then handcuffed the crew at gunpoint, placed black hoods over their heads, seized and scrubbed their devices, and then held them for days. Ultimately, the crew was released, given there was no evidence to support any narco activity or any charges that may be against them. So to recap, we struck a vessel, we struck it again, set fire to it as it was sinking. And as public reports say, even drank their beer. We detained the survivors and then we let them go.
So when have any of us heard this extensive account of what happened? And this is an extensive account of, highly toxic masculinity, thinking that it is absolutely okay to brutalize people. And this is Whiskey Pete's modus operandi.
This should be eye-opening. Now let's go to another example, the double tap or 2-strike attack that took place on September 2nd in the Caribbean. A vessel was struck, disabled, and then struck again, killing all but 2 survivors that were left clinging to the wreckage. And this is the thing. We know this happened. We know how it happened. And the Defense Department still refuses to release the follow-up video of the killing of the shipwrecked survivors, even though they released the initial one to the public in major news networks worldwide. No difference in sources and methods in the 2 videos. but still not released to the public. Of course, the backlash was severe at the time and perhaps is being forgotten. An unpredictable but ignoble display of character from this administration. Fingers were pointed at one another as everyone scurried to cover, and a tacit acknowledgement that this was an issue potentially violating international law. Now, I've reviewed what's been available. The phony rationale that these attacks are about fentanyl trafficking, when we know fentanyl comes from China, India, through Mexico. Then the baseless argument that this was about narco-terrorism. You know, I don't believe a word of it. This was to create leverage for regime change in Venezuela. And now the president acknowledged that was about oil. Beyond the simple need for justice and exercising American values, it's important for us to discuss what the U.S. belligerence in the world stage means to our security, our ability to marshal cooperation with our allies.
But again, do we believe in cooperation when we don't believe in empathy? And we've dehumanized our own selves, and not just the people that are being bullied and treated disrespectfully and inhumanely. So if we were a humane nation, this wouldn't be a conversation. But inhumanity has become acceptable.
And most importantly, not to normalize these actions that could endanger the lives of our own service members put in similar peril. Let me be clear about one thing. Whether it's these particular strikes discussed here, the one that killed 11 others off the coast of Venezuela, whether it's the 178 other killings, with each of these extrajudicial killings, the administration is pirating American values. We'll continue to investigate this. We will. It'll come forward in the future. Some days that second video will be released. But we've got to stop also using our precious resources that are being taxed so heavily all over the world on actions that hurt our military. They hurt our military and they hurt our standing internationally, and they're hurting our standard here at home. I hope that we can move forward. I hope we can review whether these are justified, because I found no justification.
So we know that this administration is trying to make it normal. These, like you said, extrajudicial killings overseas, they want that to be normalized. Killings here in the U.S., they want that to be normalized. Extrajudicial killings. And if it is normal for young men to see dominance and overbearing as fine and dandy, and being ruthless to vulnerable as being fine and dandy, then they will have no problem with a government that says, hey, we're going to sock it to those that we don't like. And you can come revel in it with us, or you can be the one that we'll sock it to.
We were given classified information on the second strike. I can't discuss it, but I must tell you, it's the most convoluted bullshit I ever heard in my life. This should be public. This is our honor. This is what it makes American a difference maker. This is what we're
It's an
proud of
incredible array of false accusations.
And I yield back my
Incredible.
time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
So, of course, we know that Dr. Jackson fool used to be the Captain Bone Spurs doctor. First time he was in office. Got to just shake your head at that one. How can we allow that type of audacious, inhumane activity? But, sadly, it's being allowed. But it won't be allowed if we as men will step up and show that you can be a gentleman and still be highly masculine. That it is not something to look down on, to care for other people while you're still coming from a sense of strength and calming strength. So, you know, we just got to do this together. Folks like Tom and I have to be the beacons. And anyone out there listening, be a beacon. Be the beacon of positivity, the beacon that shows a young person or an old person, even, because you can teach old dogs new tricks. I see it happening all the time. But let's be that positivity. Copycat says our own Prez is a rapist and a pedo, and he surrounds himself with people who do the same. Yep. So, we know that he has lifted up some of these misogynistic manosphere folks, the two brothers that were under indictment overseas and were fleeing to get away from being prosecuted for prostitution and rape. So we've got to be louder than the bullies. When I say loud, I don't mean become toxic like them, but we've got to raise our voices, show our cheerfulness in the face of inhumanity, show that our humanity as a community has the power of strength and joy, even when their inhumanity would seek to bring us down. So I encourage anyone and everyone, get out, find a civic way to engage with your community, build civic decency. We can do it. That's why I'm running for magistrate. I want to build up this life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone in Hardin County, Kentucky. This will start. That's a place to start. Start at home. And I want to see government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Real people, not corporations. All right, y'all. Just don't forget, those corporations are now running the algorithms. And they're not going to let go of this moneymaker, which the manosphere is part of the big moneymaker. They're not going to let go of our youth that easy. So we've got to find a way to help them unplug and get into plugging in to real humanity, real human interaction. How to do it? Well, there's multiple ways. You say, for me, it's teaching in a public school. It is being a part of the American Legion here in Hardin County, in Elizabethtown, being a part of Veterans of Foreign War in Elizabethtown in Hardin County. It is being a part of, my local Episcopal church, where we believe in lifting everyone up, that every voice should be heard all together at once, and that, heaven, whatever it is, whether it's figurative or whether it's literal, it's not going to be a divided place. It's not going to be a place where we segregate one another. We're all going to be in it together, celebrating what we are. So let's make it. We got to build it. If we build it, community will come. But we've got to build the community for there to be community. Otherwise, we're just talking platitudes. All right. Well, let's see. Before we close out here, there we go. I doubt many of these young toxic boys have read Niccolo Machiavelli, though. So, yeah, you have to school me a little bit on that, Tom. I've read some Machiavelli. I really didn't see him as being someone that I looked up to. I felt that his style and urgings were a manipulative form of leadership. Maybe I interpreted it wrong. Like to see what you think. Copycat says, our own president. Yeah, I guess I read that a second ago. I missed Tom's comment. All right. So, y'all, remember, this is all about loving our neighbors as ourselves. That is the, just the central core of what it means to have true humanity, to have empathy. Empathy should be our guiding light. So, with that, don't forget, everyone, remember, everyone deployed overseas, they're out there not because they chose this, but because they've been placed there. So let's keep them in mind. Let's lift them up. Let's bring them home as soon as possible. And bless your corazón. Get out. Love your neighbors. Meet your neighbors. Interact. Build community. Okay. Tom says he's not my role model, to be honest. Okay. Yeah. I thought I had read him right. Yeah. Highly instructional on how to be manipulative. Yeah. Probably doesn't. You're saying those young folks probably don't realize that the guys they're being manipulated by are Machiavellian. Okay. Got it. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of the week. I've got a 3-day weekend thanks to Derby coming up. And thanks, Copycats. Yeah, appreciate that. If everyone, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Share it with your neighbors. Let's get the word out. And also, hopefully, everyone votes in May in the primary so we can put the people like Plattner. We have plenty of people here in Kentucky just like him. Let's put them on our tickets in November. We got to vote in both of these elections. Crucial times in world history, not just United States history right now. We're living it.